So let's start. There are actually two ways how you can approach this presentation. The first approach would be in a case that you have a perfect environment where Agile is working fine, there is no any kind of problems, you're so happy with it, and in that case, you are here because you want your Scrum to fail. So that would be the first part of the approach, and that would be a bit sarcastic approach. Second one would be in a case that you are working with Scrum, you are maybe struggling with it, and you would probably want to improve it, and you want your Scrum to succeed. During my intro, let's take a look at the sponsors. So the main idea of the presentation is, let's say I was in luck, and I have been coaching around the world, Scrum quite a lot, and I have seen a couple of most prominent mistakes, conception, misunderstandings that pops up, and I have tried to compile them into 10 most common reasons why Scrum fails. So let's start. Number 10, ignorance is a bliss. First question is how do you learn Scrum? How do you know it? How do you perceive it? And then how are you sure that you know about what are you talking about? Average readers can read around 250 words per minute. And if you want to learn Scrum, most probably you will go to a Scrum guide which contains 5,000 plus words. This is the now official guide from the Scrum Alliance and Scrum.org. After you have, let's say, understood what's going on, then you would probably read the manifesto because you really wanted to build some foundation into your Agile knowledge. You would most probably go to the principles also, and for all of that, to acquire your knowledge of Scrum, you need 20 to, let's say, 25 minutes. And yep, after this 25 minutes, you can update your CV so that you know Scrum. Since Scrum is an Agile framework and Agile is based on Lean, then you probably know what Lean is also. Perfect opportunity to update your LinkedIn profile too. Let's focus on this Scrum guide and see what's the definition of Scrum. So it's a framework, yep, complex environment, highest possible value, that's clear. Nice picture that Scrum.org has tweeted, tell us a bit more different story of the Scrum guide. What's the idea and what is the meaning, which is the, by volume, much greater than the Scrum guide. And of course, Scrum guide tells us that Scrum is lightweight, simple to understand, and difficult to master. And here is the key thing of learning Scrum. What does it mean, difficult to master? I will borrow analogy from Alistair Coburn, saying that idea of mastery comes from pretty much Japanese martial art Aikido, and they say that there are actually 3 levels of achieving mastery of something. First level would be when you actually learn your rules, you know the rules, and you obey them without any question. That would be actually the first part. Second part is when you are in a bit more working environment, you understand the rules, you understand the context, and then you try to adopt rules to what you're working on. And high level of mastery is when you actually are the rule. The most, let's say, beneficial comparison with be the rule would be when you really have a high-performing team, which is a goal in Agile to achieve. People know what to do, where to go if they have questions, where to go if they have something to ask, and they really understand the business problem that they are solving. This is your idea. Now, if you go to a theory, ask yourself, how much time do you need to assemble the team and to get to the performing time, to the performing peak? It takes more than 25 minutes. And this comes from the idea that most of the time, people think they understand the Agile, they understand the Scrum, and they just misinterpret it and they learn. Agile, as Scrum also is a practice. It's something that you do constantly and you constantly improve. It's not something that you learn so quickly. How do you learn? Improve your environment for the Scrum Masters, give them training, and focus on the teams. Talking about the Scrum Masters, this is a typical job description from a secretary, and unfortunately, enormous amount of these things like make travel arrangements, schedule appointments, and so on are the work of the Scrum Masters. That this is in a typical environment where the Scrum is misunderstood. And I can understand the small companies when you have a 10, 15, 20 people, you do not have a quite enough money or a budget to invest in a specific person as a Scrum Master, which will not bring any tangible value, but what Scrum Master actually should do. The idea of a person in a company comes from the authority. So when a person walks into a room, you have specific perception of that person. By the definition, authority is the power to give orders or make decision, and the question is valid. What kind of authority your Scrum Master has? Is your Scrum Master someone who will schedule meetings, or is your Scrum Master someone who will fight with the most top level of your organizational chart in giving you as a team space to breathe? This is a question to address in the idea of having a Scrum Master. Authority in sociology is also a bit differently perceived, but the idea of having a Scrum Master as a charismatic person who will lead the team, guide the team, protect the team, and this is maybe most important at the beginning, you are protecting the team from a wide range of different people who are most of the time higher on the org chart or organizational chart of the company. And the Scrum Master should be one who fights that. Let's see what the Scrum Master, what the Scrum Guide says about Scrum Master. Actually, there are 3 points in the Scrum Guide about the Scrum Master. I have selected the most complicated one. So your beloved Scrum Master in a team should be doing this, leading and coaching organization. If you just take a look at the soft skills that one coach should have, this should be quite enough to know how you should develop your Scrum Masters. Scrum Guide also tells us that Scrum Master should have some planning skills because we must plan Scrum adaptation or Agile transition. This heavily relies on the change management, so your Scrum Master should be also very knowledgeable person regarding the change management. Helping employees and stakeholders understand and enact Scrum in empirical product development means that your Scrum Master should understand what the product is, what is the empirical environment, and how to fight with all the others who do not understand that. And the number of those other guys are huge. And again, causing change that increases productivity of the Scrum team, again, change management and enormous amount of psychological skills. Now, if you are in the state of transition or somewhere there, question is, what kind of person should I search as a Scrum Master? As a beginning, maybe you should take a look at something like that, because at the beginning, when the team is totally disorganized, they have no idea what they are doing, they have no idea where they are, job description would look like pretty much like this. You need to take care of the people, make them understand the stuff, enable them to act as a team, and then protect them from all the rest of the world. I really like this slide, especially this organized play group activities with the neighboring children, with the neighboring teams, how your teams communicate, how they do stuff. And this is the way how the Scrum Master actually starts to build its way. And the most common, as a second part of this, making your Scrum fail, kill your Scrum Masters, or if you want your Scrum to succeed, invest in them, because amount of soft skills and of course technical knowledge to understand the domain is really, really huge. Let's see number 8. There is a mindset of Agile and there is a mindset of the waterfall where we plan stuff and then we try to implement. And the idea of the waterfall mindset was to follow that plan. The problem is that we lose all of our energy and everything else on following that plan and changing everything else to be in line with that plan. The thing in Agile are quite different, but somehow this idea of commitment or commit to a plan still applies. And unfortunately, I have been present to many demonstrations or sprint review, as you like to call them, where people simply challenge the team, but you have committed to deliver something. It is simple that team most probably and very rarely will deliver all the work planned. Let's see what Scrum Guide tells us. Before that, let's talk about definitions. Commitment is an agreement or pledge. By the definition, pledge is a promise or undertaking. You cannot ask someone to promise time and money. You do not commit to timeline and to dates. You commit to the goals and objectives. And as we all know, regarding the Agile, we are committing to the Agile values. What in part of the sprint planning, Scrum Guide tells us what should we do regarding the sprint plan. There are actually two topics in the sprint planning. What can we do in this sprint? And the topic two is how will the chosen work get done? This is a responsibility of the development team. And most beloved word on this slide is a forecast. Team forecast what they think they can do. Most often, someone from the business side will come and tell you, yeah, but we have promised this user story. Well, that's not the problem of the development team, because the development team forecast and they do not promise anything. If you want to go in a forecast definition, forecast is a prediction. And you, on a Scrum retrospective, you cannot challenge team on commitment, on pledging, and you cannot say to the team, we need to improve our pledging abilities, or you cannot say to the team, we need to improve our promising abilities. But should we improve our forecasting abilities? Definitely yes. Idea of the using word commit and commitment just put the stress on the team. In general and in practice, if you are able to deliver 80–85% of your forecasted stuff in one sprint, you are on a very good track. Let's see what next. Unfortunately, things happen that development is just one part of the huge projects, and in the huge projects we of course have the project managers. As the pressure grows, project managers go around and just ask the question, what's the status? Unfortunately, this mindset of knowing the status has somehow grown into the Scrum, and unfortunately again, most of the time I have been present where on the daily stand-up people behave like this. Yesterday I have resolved some number, I have worked on some user story, today maybe this, and I have no impediments. This is not the core of the daily stand-up. This looks like this, and it shouldn't be like that. Daily stand-up is something completely different. Again, if the team is a core and there are many stakeholders in the projects, many people want to know what's going on, what the team is doing. That's the opposite thing of the knowing what's the status, knowing what the team does is something like this. And if your daily stand-up has 10 people where 2 people are from the team, others are just listening, well, I guess you're wrong, and just that. Let's see what daily Scrum should be. It is really simple as that. Daily Scrum, 15 minutes time box, I guess you know that, but the development team. And the definition of the development team is quite simple. Easiest metaphor, Scrum development team is maybe like the basketball team. They're on the field, they together, they work together, and they synchronize between themselves. It's not a question of status, it's not a question of project manager, not the business analyst, not the head of department. Daily stand-up is just for the team because they plan what they will do in one day. Of course, you probably have saw these questions, you know them, but this is the idea of the daily Scrum. Team stands, talk, they plan what they will do, they rely on each other, they act as a team, and they are there for the team itself. Development team is consisted of developers. As you can see here, daily Scrum is no for Scrum Master, no for Product Owner. Of course, it's beneficial that they are there, but keep your daily stand-up just for your development team, not for the other guys. What happens when you hear this? I assume that you had this issue, but it's quite simple, and it's a nature, it's a psychology, that it's finger pointer time, and the blame game starts when you hear something like there is a bug in a production. Question is, how do we avoid this? And actually, there is a way in Agile mindset that help us to get rid of these things. There is the idea of development team, and Scrum Guide says that team is consisted no actually a developer, so there is no other title than developer in a Scrum team. Now you can argue where is the tester, where is this guy, where is the left guy, where is the right guy. Actually, you can comment this as you like. I like to comment that Scrum guy doesn't care because there is a team. And a team should be cross-functional, meaning that they know what they're doing, and should be self-organizing, meaning we know how to self-organize, and they are delivering artifact. In this case, artifact is called increment. So if there is a bug production, thing is quite simple, and the Scrum guide says quite simply, accountability belongs to the development team. If there is a bug, we can blame a developer who created the feature, we can blame the person who did the code review, we can blame the team lead who has done merge maybe, or we can blame a tester who tests the code. We do not care in Scrum. Accountability lies to the development team. They are cross-functional, they are self-organizing, they are creating increment. End of story. Simple as that. Unfortunately, in the huge organizations, huge roles come into play, and then we are just actually searching for the job title whose responsibility is something that went wrong. Here is the team. In Scrum, the team has the accountability for something like that. It's in human actually nature to complain, but somehow it has happened that a lot of things I have heard on the meeting, now I assume that you all know that I'm talking about the sprint retrospective, but complaining or something that you cannot change or something that the team cannot affect is ridiculous. And unfortunately, you can ask a question, is there an official time where you can complain? And people, of course, find sprint retrospective as an official time to complain on a bunch of other stuff. From the strategy, vision, things that are realistic, and of course, things that are not realistic. And I must say that from my perspective and in my experience, this is the most misused, violated, mutilated, whatever you want to call it, event in a Scrum. And I think it's simple. People do not understand it, or then again, we do not invest in our poor Scrum Masters to help us understand what's going on. If you go back a bit in the past to start reading the books about the methodologies of leading, of having the projects and everything else, and actually if you refer to the most prominent project management books, you would not find something where it tells you on the specific occasions you retrospect on the people, on the process and everything else. There is an idea of lessons learned, there is an idea of the knowledge, but this is a perfect time and a place to amplify your learning between the people, between the team. This is an official meeting where you can raise your team from the phase like storming to get them to the norming and get them to the performing, because that is what you want in the product complex and environment. By the definition, Scrum Guide tells us quite simple what is the sprint retrospective, and the focus is quite there. Scrum team, they talk about themselves, they think about themselves, they think how they will improve themselves, they think realistically because they need to create a plan how to improve themselves, and of course in the next sprint they need to implement that plan. The purpose of the sprint retrospective is how the sprint went regards to people, relationship, process, and tools. This is the idea. Identify and order major items that you want to improve. Again, only Scrum team. And of course, create a plan. Unfortunately, Scrum Guide doesn't tell us a lot, but it's a guide. But there is an excellent book that tells us how we should do our retrospectives. First, we need to set a stage, set the context and tone of the meeting. And this is a core time when the Scrum Master should pull the development team out of the context, meaning make the team do not worry about the current bug, current issue, current project, or whatever. Make them talk about themselves, which can be often quite difficult talk because we need to criticize some other moves of the people or some other things that the people have done. But this is what needs to be done if you want to do this meeting properly. Second thing, again, Scrum Master is the one who facilitates this meeting. He needs to pull the valuable data from the people, people must be honest, people must be free to speak, that someone has maybe made a mistake or the way that we are doing is not right. So these are the difficult talks. And after getting data, try to understand what can be improved, what's wrong, decide how to improve that, and of course, close the session with some nice idea and a plan how to improve stuff. These are the simple things as they appear, but handling people and babysitting them is not always easy. Let's see what next. One of the great things that Agile Mindset has done is to bring business people to work together with development team. But somehow, still, there is a us versus them idea. Again, as the things are becoming more complex, you will see in organizations that you have your team, then there is a product owner, then maybe there is a group product owner, then maybe there is a product manager, maybe boss of the product manager nevertheless, and there is a client somewhere there, which is against all the ideas and the mindset of the Scrum where the user should be there, business person should be there because development team should do what is the core idea of the Scrum and Agile. There is a business problem and development team should help to solve the business problem. In order to solve the business problem, they must understand the business problem. And that's the idea. Team have a knowledge, have a technical knowledge, and they will provide a solution. Now, if you have a client somewhere there and a couple of people in the between, of course, many of the communication is lost. And that's the problem. And again, unfortunately, it happens quite often that I hear the product owner, yeah, that's what they want. That's what this team wants. What's the business value? Well, I'm not quite sure. That's not the goal. The goal is quite simple. There is a business problem. We need to recognize the business problem. We need to interpret it. And there is a development team who will help us solve the business problem, bring the solution to the business problem. Psychology is quite simple. There is something called tribal mindset. We like to meet up with the people with a simple interest. In a company, this is reflected with the silo mentality, and there is an always idea it's there who doesn't do their work, and it's us. Thinking simple, we are all there, and the Agile mindset has brought the business people to the development in order to solve the problem itself. What should product owner do? It should maximize the value, whatever that means. Let's see what the Scrum Guide says. Product owner is actually responsible for maximizing the value of the product and the work of the development team. And this is a core thing where the product owner should understand the business problem, communicate it to the development team, and let the development team solve it. This is the idea, and this guide directly, and as we know, daily work with the team. What's a good thing here in the Scrum is that development team is not allowed to work from any other requirement sets than the backlog or act on any other orders or whatever you want to call it than the product owner. So this is the core, and unfortunately the role of the product owner is most of the time lost somewhere between in the organizational chart, and the end client is there. No one understands it, and of course, if you don't understand the business problem, you cannot solve it properly. Let's see what next. Bureaucracy. Cool. Yeah. Yes, it is. These are just a couple of questions that I got. Especially I like the one with the vacation and the salaries in Scrum, how they are resolved. But it is really common, especially in a huge company, that people tend to create processes that they are not actually there needed. One specific example was with this code review stuff, and the process was going like this. So I'm a developer, I developed some code, I committed, I send the request for the review. That request is actually a meeting with my peer programmer and with the architect guy from the application. Then I sit with them on a meeting. Then we are on the meeting. We have a meeting minutes, which is actually a list of the things that could be improved in the code. Then I, as a developer, take this list, then I implement the list, then I send again a meeting invite for my peer just to verify that everything is improved well, and of course to the QA team QA team, which is somewhere else, that they also can verify what is going on. This is a simple how process should not work in the Scrum. I would be very happy to argue if we are building some software for flying planes or something where the risk of losing human life is huge. So I would understand the overhead of the process, but it was not this case. Again, often bug fixing, bugs are here in this list, then the requirements are there, then the technical tasks are there. That's not the idea. You do not kill your Scrum with bureaucracy and with additional process. This all looks like this, and it shouldn't. Scrum is process framework, and we do incorporate our processes into that framework. But the question is quite simple here, what the process is. Couple of definitions here, series of action, blah, 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 and the core thing, particular result. We are creating a new product in Scrum. We are in an uncertain place. We experiment in order to reduce risk. We do not know what the particular result will be. This is why you do not kill your Scrum with the process. You focus on learning and attacking the unknown. You're not forcing a process on the future that you do not know how to resolve. One of the typical implementation of the good process is a checklist, because checklists help us to understand what is going on. So for example, if I'm the developer, when I am finished with my development, I have a checklist what to do. I commit the code, I run the test, I build, I merge, or whatever, and that's just something that I do all day, and that is something for what I will use a checklist. One of the most beautifully, let's say, practical application of the checklist is something called surgical safety checklist. It comes from the World Health Organization. So they have a process when they start operation, they have a process when they end operation, and the quite is really, really simple what's on the checklist. Before you cut the patient, you check is the name correct, and after you close it, you check do you have all your scissors on number in a case that you have forgot something in it. This is why, and this is for what you are using processes, for something that works, for something that is constantly there, and for something that should bring you back particular result. You do not kill your Scrum or bring it as an overhead and create a process for the future. So what should you do in Scrum? You solve the unknown. Scrum is based on empiricism. This is what empiricism is. You are working in an unknown environment and you are trying to attack this. This is the definition of the experiment. Of course, we should be careful with the experiments. We experiment in the specific environment where we can do it. We do not run wild, and we do not create this with the experiments, because experiments can get wrong. Do it simple. Scrum has an iteration. Learn. Do not focus on the process. Focus on the learning, the unknown. It happens, again, quite often that team leads, bosses, go to a conference like this or talk with the friends, and then they come back and say, yeah, I have heard it, they are using Scrum, and everything is so beautiful, everything is so fine, everything is working perfectly, and we should go Agile. And the question is, what are we? What are we doing? What is our daily job? In what kind of an environment are we working on? And somehow it happens that Agile and Scrum has become fashion trend, promising unicorns on rainbows and making you want to be somewhere, and now everybody is Scrum and now everybody is Agile, but the people really, unfortunately, do not understand it. And again, I have so many unhappy faces when you mention word Agile and when you mention word Scrum. There is an idea of being in fashion. Yeah, I want to be cool, so I'm going to use Scrum. But the question is what the Scrum is and how you use it. And of course, what kind of job are you working on? Scrum Guide tells us simple, Scrum is a framework for developing and sustaining complex products. So if you're working in maintenance, if your team is maintaining a software, resolving a bug, resolving a ticket, that is not complex product. Then maybe Scrum isn't the right way or the right framework that you should use. If you want to go Agile, there is a Kanban, so use it. Why not? If you are working in a complex environment and if you are creating your product, Scrum is for you. And be aware that Scrum is written as an Agile by developers and for developers of the software. And unfortunately, I have seen people who push Scrum in the marketing, in the operations, and what else? Pre-sales and sales. They also want to have their stand-up and they claim that they are Scrum. Simply do not use it where you shouldn't. And if you want to think and you do want to know, is it Scrum right for you? Focus on the core piece of the Scrum, core functionality, and that is development team. Do you have a team? You know the size, 7 plus minus 2. That should be your team. Does that team consist of professionals? Is that team empowered by organization to decide on what they are working on? What kind of freedom do they have? Are they empowered? Do they have enough resources to do what you're asked for them? Are they able to be accountable for their actions? These are the questions that you can ask yourself if you want to go Scrum. Are you able to make the team self-organizing? Do you have a quality people who will explain what that means? Accountability is quite different from responsibility. Responsibility means that you are responsible for the task. Accountable, you have an account for something that you're doing. And as we have seen, there is a bug in production, development team holds the accountability. And are you able to get the people around, to empower them, to make them, to help them be self-organizing? Are you sure that they have all the knowledge to go and to finish the work? And of course, are you able to make them accountable? If you have all of this, then the Scrum is right for you. If not, then don't do it. Because stand up with the 1.5 developer or 1.2 developer and 3 other persons doesn't make sense. Team doesn't make sense when you have 2 persons, when you have 3 persons, have them 5, 6, 7. Because they need to self-organize. And this is a core, this is the idea of the Agile, to have a team who is able to deliver something. And people who are, of course, cross-functional, meaning that they have the ability to deliver what you have asked from them. If you want to go Scrum, if you want to be happy with the Scrum and with the agility, focus on making your teams really professional, self-organizing, cross-functional, and of course, accountable for something. And the number one consists of all the other things, and when you start working with the transition or you are working with the team, so already there is something that happens, and that something is culture. The question is, what is culture? If you go and talk with the people who are 6, 7, 8 years in one company, they won't be quite able to explain you very well because they are part of that culture already. When you are new in a company, you will start asking questions, but why are you doing this like this? But why are you like that? Why are you like that? And you will probably get the answer, yeah, that's the way how we do it. And that's the way is actually part of the culture. And now the question is, there is something called Agile mindset. Are we able to project that Agile mindset on the culture that the company possesses? Let's see the definition. Culture, characteristic and knowledge of the particular group and the people. Let's go a bit deeper. It is defined by the language, religion, custom, social habits, music, and arts. Nice. Let's talk about corporate culture. Values that contribute to unique social and psychological environment of the organization. Cool. That includes expectation, experience, philosophy. It is expressed self-image, inner working, interaction, future expectation, and it based on attitude, beliefs, written and unwritten rules. What is unwritten rule? When the boss is quite commonly enter your working area and tells you, I need this now. But that's actually 2 hours of work. Yeah, but I need it now for that. That's the culture. It's not in the process, it's not in the framework, it's nowhere, but that's the typical culture. Are you able to decide something for yourself? Are you able to do something for yourself? Or how empowered are you? That's the culture. Are you able to bring a decision, or you must escalate everything there? That's the culture. Culture is when you cannot go to the team lead of the different team, you must go to your team lead, and then team leads go to a boss, and that boss goes to this boss, and then you go down there in order to escalate something. That's the culture. What Scrum says about culture and how Scrums talk about it. There is something that actually, let's check this, just a quick effects of the culture. It's the way how you make decisions, how do you question authorities. And this is often quite interesting. Let's say you're a new person in a team, junior developer, junior tester, junior QA. Are you able to walk freely to the application architect and challenge him about something? That's the culture. Most of the time, and it kind of happens, and unfortunately I was part of that example where there was something called architect board and actually no one could touch those guys. And of course developers were really disappointed because they could not bring any decision, they couldn't bring any new ideas, and especially new technologies and so on and so on. That's the part of the culture. Of course, are you able to understand the language when people speaking? Are you free to ask questions, raise issues, negotiate, and of course, how do you deal with conflicts? How do you deal with conflict with your boss? His boss tells you what you need to do, and that's the conflict, we solve the conflict, boss tell me what to do. Is it like that, or you collaborate with your boss? That is something that culture directly affects. Let's see about Scrum. Scrum has a values. You can maybe talk a bit more about these values, and especially if you go to the extreme programming, you will see similar words, but pretty much we are running around these. This is a commitment to the goal and to the cause, to the resolving a problem, not to the timeline. So that's one of the values. Courage, you need to brave to experiment in the unknown. Focus, you have your sprint goal, you have the idea what you need to achieve in your sprint, you focus on that. Openness, when you see the problem, you act on it, you talk about it, you are free to discuss it. You have your Scrum retrospective to discuss what's good, what's bad, in your team, and of course in the other team that you're communicating with. And of course, you respect people. This is how Scrum reflects to the culture. And if you want Agile or a Scrum to succeed, you should be focusing on that. And since you're actually learning here by anti-patterns, let's see a couple of antonyms for these values. And this is actually how you can assess your agility in a company. Things are quite simple. So let's take fear, actually my favorite. You go to the junior person and ask him, are you afraid of your boss or you are not afraid? And you let them choose. Are you near to the ultimate fear or are you not afraid at all? And if you take a look at some assessing agility in your company's questionnaires, you can find these kind of questions. And this is actually what you should actually ask. Disperse. Are you focused as a developer? Do you have clear tasks what you need to do? Do you have idea what that should do? And are you able to execute it? Or as a developer, you're working on 2 or 3 tasks, then you are helping the other team, then you are answering the questions, and then you are going to interview some other person on a job. This is your agility, and this directly attacks your Scrum implementation. Are you open to discuss disagreements? And are you open to criticism? Do you honor your colleagues and everything else? So these are the things that directly affect culture of the companies. And this is the way how you can measure your success with Agile and with Scrum. You test values. You do not see is daily stand up on the regular intervals. You do not check are the team doing its planning or something like that on the regular basic intervals. You check the values. You assess the values. You ask the people. You let the people know. If you check these words in many others, project management books, or you will not find them because books are prescriptive and they are written in that way, and the Agile has made a small revolution there telling us to focus on values. And that's the core. If you are in transition, if you want to implement Agile, check the values. It's easy to set up a stand-up, it's easy to set up a planning, it's easy to do everything else, check your values. To try to wrap up on a positive note, these are the synonyms for the values that we have here. And these are the things that you should be focusing on. And if you have a Scrum Master who is hopefully well engaged and have enough knowledge to help you out, check with him how he thinks or she about these synonyms there. How development team thinks those values are here in your company, or are they values? Are they valued enough? Sorry. So this is the idea. How do you do Agile transition? Ask those questions, do the transition, implement Scrum, come back 2 months after, ask the same questions. And if you see those things do not improve, then you're doing something wrong. Agile is a mindset based on values. Extreme programming, Scrum, everything else is based on the values. It's based on the people. That's what's the good thing of the Agile. It's fully focused on the people itself. Not on the roles, not on the process, not on the bureaucracy. It's everything about the communication. It's everything about the values. And check your values before start implementing it. Check your values doing implementation of it. Stop criticizing Agile before you check your values, because if you're not able to provide this to your people, to your company, then Agile will definitely fail. If you're able to focus on this, if you let the people focus on this, move this or broaden their comfort zone for them to be eased to talk about these tricky things, then you're on the good way. This is the core of a Scrum, not some schedule with the meetings. This is the core of the Agile. So if you want to be Agile, focus on this. Thanks. Have fun implementing your Agile. We have 2-3 minutes for a Q&A. If there are some questions, maybe you can ask, or if you're not brave enough, we can talk outside, so feel free. Nevertheless, thanks a lot. Hvala tebi. Hvala lijepo.